Alright, what's up guys? Matt here from Loon, and today we're just going to be tying a real basic Chubby Chernobyl. Size 8 firehole sticks, 718 in the vise. 140 denier Vivus thread. And we're just going to take some touching turns down the shank here. Just kind of, deep into the bend. Next up, I'm just going to apply a little bit of dubbing. This happens to be a UV fine and dry stonefly orange. I've seen this fly tied probably 300 different colors, combinations. So sky's the limit. Great fly for dry dropper, and just a multitude of applications, from stoneflies to hoppers, whatever you really are seeing out there. So I just have a piece of 3mm foam, and I just put a little bit of a stretch into it, and I put a little bit more than maybe like a 50-degree slit in the back, and I'll just go ahead and wrap that in. That's going to be kind of our back section of this fly. And for our legs, which we'll put in next, I'm just using this kind of cinnamon colored super floss. Go ahead and trim this in half. And I'm going to go ahead and apply that to either side. It's not the most stable at this point. You can use stuff like Zap-A-Gap if you want. I don't stress out over it that much, just because I'm going to go ahead and wrench down at this point, and we'll get a pretty good bind here on this fly. So the legs just kind of sitting there, and at this point, once we have our second tie down point, be a little bit better. I do take a little bit of poly yarn for the wing. In this case, I'm just going to be using a white. And I treat it much like I did with the legs. I'm just going to half that over, throw it in there, and wrap it down. If I can get the legs to separate a little bit better there, it'll be great. So once I get to that point, I'm going to go ahead and create a larger dubbing noodle with this dubbing. And so we'll pull a little bit off. And I'm going to leave everything long at this point. I don't stress over the fit and finish of the bug at this point. And I leave this ridiculous 4-inch section of foam hanging off the front, so I can get it all trimmed up, looking proper right at the end. So what I'll do here is I'll take some turns, kind of covering my tracks, and then I'll lift up the foam and just wrap in a nice underbody, moving forward to my next tie-in point. I do leave a little bit of a space there for the head of the fly. So at this point, we're going to be fairly bomb-proof. I can go ahead and trim up these legs if I want. You can leave them super long, make them short. Take a little bit off the back there. But we're going to do the same thing with the legs up front. So if there's a natural curve to this material, you want to exploit that too. I didn't touch on that in the first set of legs, but when you kind of put if the material bows that way and you point them outwards, it'll make your legs sit at a different angle. Makes it a little bit easier for them to tie in, and it also keeps them split so it's easy for you to wrap thread through. So again, you can change your colors of poly yarn as you want, grays, oranges, put in a hot spot, whatever really kind of just stokes you out. I like to make a U shape for mine, and I just set the U over the top of my thread wraps so it has a nice broad base to it. And I'll go ahead and tie that in, creating my overwing technically. From there we'll go ahead and trim. At this point you could apply a little bit of like Zap-A-Gap or UV resin. Doesn't really make a huge bit of difference to me. I've always found that the thread kind of just holds this together really, really well. Even on those like 40 fish days where they're just stomping this thing. So I'll go ahead and create a really nice bright collar here. And the cool thing is a lot of times like I will leave my front and back legs just a little bit different lengths. I don't know why, but I just kind of like those back legs to play out as a back leg slash, you know, tail, if you will. And what I'll do is I'll come in here and I'm going to really tightly wrap the whole head of this fly up. And I'll go ahead and keep that foam out of my way along with those legs. This is where, if you're into whip finishers, this is where you'd use it. I use my hands because I'm lazy and I don't want to pick up another tool. So at this point, what I do is I take all of my wing, kind of give it a solid trim, find my stragglers, and I'll cut my front legs just a little bit longer, and I'll give the face just a little bit of a trim so it looks a little bit more like a salmon fly or something like that. And I'll pop in here with just a little bit of UV flow, and I will cure that just to make the head of the fly, if you will. Overall, this is a high floating pattern. The poly yarn does float, the foam floats, and this will suspend multiple nymphs underneath it for a dry dropper application. Like I said, this bug has play pretty much everywhere around the world, and it's just one of those. It's just one of those classic, super big dry flies. Works as a stonefly, hoppers, just as an attractor pattern, etc. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this and learned something. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.